One of my favorite things about Genshin is that old units are very often brought back up to relevancy as they get access to new things. And with Nod Krai right around the corner introducing Lunar Reactions as the regional gimmick, there's a lot of potential for some of these old units to get a good boost. So in today's video, we'll take a look at different DPS units and what they would need to get a good buff and how likely I think they are to get it. And at the end, I'll have a tier list to summarize and recap everything. Keep in mind, we will have a lot more information to work with once we do know it's all in 6.0, but I figured it would be more interesting and fun to talk about this now. That said, let's get started. Alright, so I'll be talking about these characters in order of their element so that it's easier to keep track of everyone. Starting with Pyro, we have Mavwika. She already has excellent team options. Lali isn't going anywhere, and I don't think Bennett gets replaced either. Right now, her best fourth slots are Iansan, Shilonen, or Escoffier for double cryo, which enables stronger combos. The only real way I see Mavrika's teams getting much better than it already is would be a better second cryo that applies similar amounts of cryo to Escoffier, while also actually having buffs for Mavrika to use as well. But that's not something I really expect we'll be getting in Nod Krai. Maybe in Snezhnaya we could get that with the Tsaritsa, but right now I think there's pretty low potential for Mavrika in Nod Krai. Now for Hu Tao, what she really needs is a new healer that buffs both her and her Hydro sub DPS at the same time. Currently, she uses either Bennett, who buffs her by a lot but not the Hydros, or Shilonen, who buffs the Hydros by a lot but doesn't buff Hu Tao by much. There was a leak about a Pyro support unit for Vaporize coming in 6.1. This could be fake, but if real, that could be exactly what Hu Tao needs. Only thing is, we don't know if that character would be a healer or not, and if they aren't a healer, Xingqiu would have to be used instead of Farina, which is unfortunate. But if that does happen, it's also rumored that instead of an Archon, the main hype character of Nod Krai is going to be a Hydro Moon Goddess. Should that be true, they would probably be best in slot in every Lunar Reaction team, and so we just need to use them instead of Farina and not care if they heal or not. So Outtro has pretty specific needs in order to get better, but I think it's a very real possibility she gets what she needs here. And like Hu Tao, Linny also likes to use Vaporize, but with him you likely wouldn't be replacing Bennett, instead going Linny, Farina, Bennett, and the new unit instead. So he hypothetically would be set to benefit regardless if the new character were to heal or not. However, if this unit were to apply off-field pyro of their own, that could result in stolen Vaporizes and the team getting ruined. But then there's also the possibility that the alleged Hydro Moon Goddess is better at applying Hydro than Farina, and this concern is removed. So basically, just like Hu Tao, Linny has a very specific set of needs, but it may be a very real possibility that he gets what he needs. Yoimiya is interesting because she's one of the Pyro DPS that does currently use Forward Melt as her best team, and I don't see that team getting any better at Nod Krai, so in order for Yoimiya to get another buff here, I believe what she'll need is for that to be a strong support set Inefa can use, and then also that we do get that Hydro Moon Goddess to use as an upgrade over Farina to make her overvape her best team. I think it would be a bit difficult for this to be a good upgrade over Melt, but it's a real possibility still. And much the same, Arlecchino currently uses Melt, but it's actually looking like Overvape with Inefa should actually be really close to Melt already, so if we get a good support set for Inefa in 6.0, that should be a surefire Arlecchino buff. Then of course, if we get a better Hydro support, it should definitely be a good upgrade to Melt at that point, so I think Arlecchino getting a good buff is extremely likely. As for Klee, the only thing I can think of for her would be if we do get that Pyro Vaporize support, perhaps they are the fourth slot in a team of Klee, Bennett, Farina, where Farina is the one vaporizing. If that character is real, I think they would definitely be an upgrade over someone like Kazuha here, so there's a reasonable likelihood for Klee, I'd say. And Diluc and Gaming, aka that boy Jamal, I don't see them getting an upgrade here at all. Their best team is Melt, and I just really can't see how it would get better here, nor can I see new supports somehow making Vaporize better for them. I could be wrong, but right now I just don't see it. Moving on to Hydro, Nuvalette is already getting a decent buff with Inefa, so if there's a support set for her in 6.0, he'll be buffed even further. I don't see his lunar-charged team getting any better after that, but it's possible we'll get more lunar reactions he would work well with. But if so, I don't really see them being better than the Inefa team, more so just more competent side-grade options he can use in different scenarios. Child, I don't see him getting improved at all. The only possibility I can imagine is the alleged Pyro Vaporize spot being better than Bennett, which isn't impossible, but I have a really hard time imagining it, and even if it does happen, I don't see it moving the needle for him much. Ayato, I don't think it's possible for him to get anything better than his Escoffier team dropping Yelan. Only real possibility I can see is maybe a Lunar Freeze character, but even then, they'd have to be better than either Farina or Yelan, which is really hard to imagine, so I'm not expecting any further Ayato buffs. I think his team has already peaked and reached his ceiling. Now, Nilou is interesting. What she needs is very specific, a Lunar Bloom character that works with her. Something like that could be big. We did see a Dendro Nod Krai character in the 5.8 stream, but I'm thinking they are probably going to have a cryo reaction like Rhymegrass, which we had in Imaginarium Theater a while ago, possibly teasing towards this. There was actually a leak about a Lunar Bloom character, but that said there was some type of Anemo Bloom reaction, so if that's the case, Nilo wouldn't be able to use that. Still, the event weapon in 5.8 works with Bloom, which would indicate that Bloom is getting something in Nod Krai, so there is at least some amount of hopium. I'm just not sure it's very much. And then Mualani, if the alleged Pyro VIP support is real and they apply off-field Pyro, that should theoretically be a massive Mualani buff. This is the only way I see Mualani getting a good buff here, but I think there's a pretty reasonable likelihood for it to occur. Moving on, let's talk about Anemo, starting with my main man, Wanderer. His team right now is generally Wanderer for on Bennett Flex, but the 4th slot options in that Flex slot, they are very low quality right now, and theoretically it should be very easy for him to get a big upgrade. There are many different ways Wanderer can be greatly buffed by new characters, but thinking Nod Krai and its gimmick specifically, Anemo's only reaction is Swirl, so naturally, he'd likely want a Lunar Swirl character to buff him here. Wanderer applies a lot of Anemo, especially if you have him C6, so depending on exactly how a Lunar Swirl character would work, logically speaking, he should be suited to use it very well. Although, one main concern I have for that would be, if the character doesn't have elemental absorption, then with Bennett there would be no off-field application to swirl off of, so in that case, we'd probably have to cross our fingers and hope for someone like the Hydro Moon Goddess to appear and be used in Bennett's place instead. Just have to hope Hoyo doesn't screw us over like they did in Natlan. I do think a Lunar Swirl character is very likely to exist though, because Varka is currently leaked as Anemo, but he's not from Nod Krai and shouldn't have a lunar reaction of his own, and so it would make sense for him to have a dedicated support that does enable Lunar Swirl for him, so hopefully they'd be designed to work great with other Anemo DPS and not just Varka. And then Zhao, it's trickier with him, because a Lunar Swirl character would have to replace Zhan Yun, otherwise you're playing 4 Anemo and have nothing to swirl, but if you replace Zhan Yun, then you have no healing for Farina unless this character happens to also heal, so then Farina would have to be replaced, but there's no other good options that apply their element off-field, thus we would likely be hoping for a new off-fielder like that Hydro Moon Goddess. It's definitely possible, although with Zhao, the quality of his current teammates is higher than that of Wanderers, so I don't think he has as much room to grow, but he still can, just not quite to the same extent. Then we have Aoife, and he's already getting a pretty good buff from Inefa, so depending on what the 6.0 artifacts do, he'll surely get even better. Only room left to upgrade anyone in his team then would be replacing Farina, so he's yet another character that will be praying for a new Premier Hydro support like that Moon Goddess. The only character on this team that really benefits from Farina's damage bonus other than herself is Auroron, so a new Hydro could easily be a large upgrade over Farina here. Then Chaska, the way her kit works should allow her to work with multiple different lunar reactions that come out. However, the quality of Chaska's melt and overfade teams with characters like Mavrika, Citlali, and Yansan, it's already just too high for me to be able to realistically imagine her getting anything better. It's definitely not impossible, just seems very improbable right now to me. And moving on to Geo, Outtro got screwed over really hard in Natlan with Shilonen not working in triple Geo for some reason. He would benefit tremendously by a new Geo that he can use alongside Goro or Chiori for a proper triple Geo team. A lunar crystallized reaction that makes the reaction actually do something for your Geo unit's damage could be exactly what he needs, and I think that has a good likelihood of occurring. Now Navia is a more of a tricky situation, because she does already use Shilonen very well, so a lunar crystallized character would need to do a lot to replace her. As mentioned, Shilonen does not work in triple Geo, so you wouldn't be able to use both her and the new character, so I'm really not expecting much for Navia here. As for Dendro, Kenichi and Emily go hand in hand, so I'll talk about them as one. Basically, what they need is a good new off-field pyro, ideally a healer or shielder so that you can play Kenichi, Emily, Iansan, and have good sustain without having to use Toma, who does nothing other than shield and deep woods. If we did get an off-field pyro sustain with good buffing, that could easily be a tremendous Kenichi buff, especially if they buff Emily from off-field as well. I think that could actually push Kenichi into the same tier as Mavrika and Skark. But if we do get a new off-field pyro, I feel like they would be niched to a specific lunar reaction and not burning, or they might not be a healer or a shielder. So while Kenichi and Emily do have a room to get a big upgrade, I don't really see it happening here, but it certainly could. They could do lunar burning, but personally I'm not really expecting it. And now Alhaitham, I can see him getting something nice. There's that Dendro character coming in 6.0. We currently have absolutely no idea what she does, but maybe her lunar reaction is Rhymegrass, and now Alhaitham's best team completely changes to include Cryo. Or maybe we get some type of Lunar Bloom character that can work in his Quick Bloom team. I expect that we'll get at least one of these two options for him. Outside of lunar reaction stuff, what he really needs for his current team is a 5-star Kuki, so an Electro healer that actually buffs. But considering that we just got Inefer as a new strong Electro support, I'm not really expecting such a character for him in Nod Krai. Tighnari doesn't work nearly as well in Quick Bloom as Alhaitham, so I'd be hoping more for something like Rhymegrass rather than Quick Bloom buffs, thus making it less likely for him to get stronger here. Now for Electro DPS, Raiden, she was unfortunately left pretty far behind in Natlan. Other Overload DPS got buffed greatly with Mavrika and Yansan/Auroron, but Raiden doesn't work well with those characters at all. Fortunately, I think Nod Krai could throw her a bone though. Right now, Electro lunar-charged is already looking to be better than Overload for Raiden, and again, we have that real possibility of both Inefa getting a good support set to use in 6.0, and then there being a better Hydro than Farina for Lunar teams coming out. So I'm pretty confident that Raiden will see a good increase. I don't think she's ever going to be on par with Clarande and Veressa, but the gap can definitely be shortened. As for Clarande, it's way harder to buff her because her Overload team has such high quality teammates already. The only way I see an upgrade to Overload occurring for her is if we get a better off-field Pyro than Mavrika, but with how much sub-DPS Mavrika does there, it's really hard to imagine. It could also be possible for a Lunar Reaction support set in 6.0 plus the new Premier Hydro support for Lunar teams to turn Taser into Clarande's best team instead of Overload, but even if that happens, I can't really see it being much more than a side grade and alternative team option for her, so I'm gonna say Clarande has a low probability for a good buff in 6.0. And Veressa, I don't see her getting any better here, nor ever, to be honest. Her Overload team already has pretty much perfect synergy. C6 Traverse and the Yansan both provide her with some of the highest buffing in the entire game, so neither of them are ever going. Then Mavrika or Shangling as the last slot, they do so much sub-DPS here that a new off-field Pyro would need to do an unholy amount of buffing to replace them. So in my eyes, Veressa released already with her perfect team, and has reached her peak potential already. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And Sino, I actually feel pretty confident he'll get a good buff here. Right now he is already getting a decent buff from Inefa, allowing him to use Quick Bloom teams such as Farina, Baizu, Inefa, or Nahida, Xingqiu, Inefa, and that will be buffed further if Inefa gets a support set. Then Farina's damage bonus buff really isn't doing much here since between Hyper Bloom, Lunar Shock, and Inefa's A1, a lot of the team's damage doesn't even scale with damage bonus to begin with. So imagine we do get that new Premier Hydro support for Lunar teams, they buff something like Elemental Mastery instead. You can probably imagine why that would be a huge buff over Farina. Then if Farina is replaced, you no longer need Baizu for healing since Inefa shields, and thus you can use Nahida or maybe even a new Dendro support instead for way more buffing. So 6.x could definitely be Sino's time to shine. Lastly, Cryo, they pretty much all use Freeze right now, so I'll talk about them all together. The only way I see Freeze getting upgraded further from here is if we get a Lunar Freeze character that replaces Shenhe. For characters like Ayaka, Ganyu, and Kaya that can use Shenhe's skill twice, it's a lot harder to replace Shenhe, but for Wriothesley, Eula, and Skark who only get one Shenhe skill, a Lunar Freeze character I think could pretty easily be an upgrade, especially for Eula since she herself is doing way more physical damage than Cryo anyway. But for these Cryo characters, we also have to keep in mind the possibility of Rhymegrass becoming a thing, and now Cryo can be used with Dendro. should that happen, I think most of these characters would still prefer Freeze because Escoffier is just that good, but I could see Risley possibly switching to Rhymegrass, and maybe Kaya becomes a great off-field cryo applier for it. And that covers pretty much everyone. Just one last thing I want to mention is the Traveler. They probably won't be getting their cryo element until we actually go to Snezhnaya in 7.0, but I highly doubt Hoyo lets us get an entire region with no new powers for the Traveler. That would suck. So something I think they might do instead is have there be something we can give Traveler or toggle on and off that enhances all of their current elements to now enable a corresponding lunar reaction. That would make a lot of sense to ensure every player has access to the reactions, even if they weren't able to pull the appropriate characters, and it would be a nice way to give the Traveler some new use cases, even if they would still be a copium option. But yeah, that's all I've got for now. I'm very excited to see how things pan out in Nod Krai, and how wrong or right my predictions are, but I'm even more interested to know your thoughts, so let me know in the comments down below. Also, feel free to join my Discord where you can talk with me and my community directly, link in description. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, and goodbye.